Ladies and gentlemen, there is one journey in life that surpasses all others. It's not the journey across the world. It's not the journey to financial wealth. It's not even the journey to success as the world defines it. It's the journey within. The greatest and most important journey you will ever take is the journey to know yourself, because you can have money and still be miserable. You can gain fame and still feel forgotten. You can win every external battle and still be losing the war within. Why? Because you don't know who you really are. And if you don't know yourself, then who is living your life? Whose dreams are you chasing? Whose fears are you feeding? Whose voice are you obeying? Today, I want to walk with you through some key truths, not just points, but pillars that will unlock the deepest parts of your identity and push you to rise into the version of you that was always meant to be. You cannot truly know yourself until you learn how to be still, not just physically still, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally still. We live in a world that moves at the speed of distraction. Notifications pinging every second, expectations pressing from every side, everyone talking but very few listening, and in all that noise, we forget the sound of our own soul. We lose the rhythm of our own breath. We disconnect from the voice within, the voice that carries our truth, our identity, our purpose. Stillness is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness. It is the sacred space where the surface noise fades and the deeper truths begin to rise. Because the voice of your true self doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't demand your attention, it waits for it. And if you never slow down, if you never unplug, if you never create space to be alone with yourself, you'll spend your entire life reacting instead of reflecting. You'll perform instead of being. You'll be so busy living someone else's version of life that you forget to discover your own. But here's the thing, silence is uncomfortable. Why? Because when you get quiet, all the things you've buried start to speak. The regrets you've suppressed, the dreams you abandoned, the pain you never processed, the truth you've avoided, it all comes up. And that's why many people avoid silence, because it confronts them, because it's easier to scroll than to sit, easier to stay busy than to face the stillness that tells you the truth. But in that discomfort is your breakthrough. Because when you allow yourself to sit in the silence, not just once, but consistently, you begin to uncover layers of yourself you didn't know were there. You start to hear what really matters to you, not what impresses others, not what gets applause, but what sets your soul on fire. You start to feel what's out of alignment. You start to realize that some of your goals are actually distractions, that some of your habits are numbing your calling. And that realization doesn't just change how you live, it changes who you become. There was a man I once knew who had everything people chase: money, position, a busy calendar, a packed house, and a lonely soul. No matter how much he achieved, he felt empty. One day, out of pure exhaustion, he sat on his balcony at sunrise with no phone, no book, no agenda, just himself. And in that silence, he cried for the first time in years, not because he was broken, but because he finally felt himself again. That one moment of stillness cracked something open. From then on, he gave himself 20 minutes each morning just to sit, just to listen, just to be. And slowly, he reconnected with his real dreams. He quit what didn't align. He became more than successful. He became whole. Stillness will show you who you are if you're brave enough to sit with it. Don't run from silence, walk into it. That's where your true self is waiting. Knowing yourself requires more than reflection. It demands confrontation. The truth is, most people are not afraid of the unknown. They are afraid of the known things they've been running from. Deep inside, there are memories you've buried, patterns you've ignored, emotions you've silenced, and questions you've refused to answer. You can't heal what you won't face. You can't grow past what you pretend doesn't exist. And you'll never know the real you if you're still hiding from your own wounds. It's easier to distract yourself than to deal with yourself. It's easier to blame your past than to look at how it's shaping your present. But self-awareness without honesty is deception. You must be willing to sit in front of your own reflection and ask the hard questions. Why do I push people away when they get too close? Why do I feel unworthy of love even when someone offers it freely? Why do I sabotage things that are actually good for me? That confrontation hurts, but it's the kind of pain that frees you. So many people are walking around broken in places they've convinced themselves no one can see, but it's not about whether others can see it. The question is, can you see it? Because what you don't face in yourself, you will repeat in your life. You'll keep choosing the same kind of relationships, making the same kind of mistakes, living out the same fears with a different name. You'll wonder why your life feels stuck, why your growth feels stunted, when the truth is, your freedom is hiding behind the very thing you keep avoiding. There was a young woman who used to panic every time someone tried to get close to her. She kept relationships shallow even though she deeply desired love. One day in counseling, she admitted something she had never said out loud. Her father left when she was 6 and no one ever talked about it. She convinced herself she was fine. She even laughed when telling the story, but in that moment the smile cracked and the tears came. She finally confronted the wound she carried for over 2 decades. And something shifted. She didn't become perfect overnight, but she became free because she stopped running, she stopped pretending, she started healing. The truth is, you don't need more motivation, you need more honesty. You need to ask yourself, what pain have I turned into personality? What fears have I dressed up as wisdom? What defense mechanisms have I mistaken for strength? That's the real work. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary because you can only grow to the level you're willing to confront. And the parts of you that you're afraid to look at, that's where your power is hiding. That's where your healing begins. Knowing yourself isn't about comfort. It's about courage. And until you're willing to confront what you've been running from, you'll keep living beneath who you were created to be. But when you do face it, you don't just find pain, you find purpose. The questions you ask yourself shape the direction of your entire life. Most people never truly know themselves because they never stop to ask the right questions. They keep asking shallow questions like, why is this happening to me? Or what's wrong with me? And those questions only deepen their confusion and pain. But when you begin to ask deeper, more intentional questions, you start to unlock parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. You begin to see patterns, beliefs, and hidden truths that have been silently directing your every move. That your mind is like a compass, and your questions are what determine where it points. If you ask yourself questions rooted in blame or shame, your inner compass will keep leading you in circles. But if you start asking, what am I really afraid of? Or what am I running from? Or what did I believe about myself that shaped this decision? Then you start peeling back the layers, and every layer takes you one step closer to your truth. But asking the right questions requires courage, because some answers will shake you. Some will show you that what you thought was ambition was actually insecurity in disguise. Some will reveal that what looked like confidence was actually control. And some will make you realize that you've been living someone else's dream, following someone else's path, and losing yourself in the process. Self-discovery is not always a revelation. It's often a reckoning, but it's the kind of reckoning that wakes you up. It pulls you out of autopilot. It makes you feel again. It reminds you that you're not just here to exist or to survive. You're here to live with intention, with clarity, and with identity. I remember a young man who came to me completely lost. He had a good job, good income, good reputation, but no peace. He was frustrated with everything. So I asked him a simple question. If no one was watching and failure wasn't possible, what would you be doing with your life? His face went still, then his eyes filled with tears. He whispered, I'd be teaching kids. I've always wanted to, but I've been too scared of what people would say if I left my corporate job. That question broke something open in him. For the first time, he saw the difference between a life that looks good and a life that feels right. And that moment shifted everything. This is what asking the right questions does. It exposes the lie, it brings clarity, it clears the fog, it puts the power back in your hands, not to fix everything at once, but to begin walking in truth. Because truth is the first step toward transformation. Don't just ask questions that make you feel better. Ask the ones that make you better. Ask the ones that make you uncomfortable. Ask the ones that don't have easy answers, because somewhere in those questions, the real you is waiting to be found. One of the most common mistakes people make in trying to know themselves is confusing what they do with who they are. They wrap their entire identity around their performance, how well they work, how much they achieve, how others perceive them. But real identity doesn't come from performance. It comes from purpose. You were not created to impress. You were created to impact. And until you align with your purpose, not your job, not your image, not your status, you'll always feel that ache, that emptiness, that sense that something's missing, even when everything looks perfect on the outside. Performance says you are what you produce. Purpose says you are who you were born to be. Performance pushes you to prove yourself every single day, but purpose anchors you. It gives you peace in the midst of pressure. It reminds you that your value doesn't fluctuate with your wins or losses. It's steady, it's rooted, and it never leaves you, even when the world forgets your name. The danger of tying your identity to performance is that when it fails, and eventually something will, you'll start to question your entire worth, you'll spiral, you'll feel like a fraud, like you're nothing without the applause. But when you live in purpose, even failure becomes a lesson, not a life sentence. You don't fall apart because you know that your assignment is bigger than any one moment, and your identity is rooted in something eternal, not external. There was a man who built his entire life on performance. He was a CEO, admired by thousands, constantly busy, always achieving. But when the company collapsed in an economic downturn, he fell into a depression so deep he barely recognized himself. Why? Because his identity wasn't just connected to his job, it was his job. And when the title disappeared, so did his sense of self. One day, a friend asked him, if you never got that title back, what would be left of you? That question broke him. But in that brokenness, he began to rebuild, not on performance, but on purpose. He started mentoring young men in his community, sharing lessons from both his success and his failure. He found passion in giving, not getting. He found joy in connection, not control. And most of all, he rediscovered who he really was beneath the pressure. Not a CEO, not a title, but a man with a mission, a voice, a heart. And that realization brought him more fulfillment than any promotion ever had. You have to stop asking, what am I doing, and start asking, why am I doing it? That shift will change your life, because once you move from performance to purpose, you stop chasing validation and start walking in alignment. And alignment is where peace lives. It's where clarity flows. It's where your real self breathes. You are not your job. You are not your numbers. You are not your image. You are your purpose. And once you live from that place, nothing can stop you, not even failure. My friend, knowing yourself is not a destination. It's a lifelong revelation. Every season of your life will show you a deeper layer of who you are, but you must be willing to look. Willing to listen, willing to change, willing to heal, willing to walk away from everything false so you can finally live in what is true. Don't just exist. Don't just survive. Don't just succeed in the eyes of others while feeling lost in your own. Know yourself. Because when you know who you are, no one can sell you a lie. When you know who you are, rejection doesn't wreck you, pressure doesn't crush you, and failure doesn't define you. When you know yourself, you walk in purpose, you speak with clarity, and you move with power. So take the journey. It's the only one that leads to freedom. Thank you.